Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Well, thank you so much for meeting with me. And I got the chance to look through your blog and read about your story. And I got to meet Pam as well. We met
Yeah, she
up,
told me
I think,
that
a
you
few weeks. What?
yeah, she told me that you had met with her, so that's awesome.
Yes, yes. She contacted me and wanted to meet. So it was just great to talk to her and see what you're doing and how you found my book. And now that you're in the group, there's so many people in there. So it's really nice to make the time and to meet people like individually. So when you posted your story, I definitely wanted to get a chance to interview and share with other parents. I think it would be very helpful even for adults to know that there's something that they can work on their own body and just relatable. So that's why we're here. So I'm so glad you're made some time and want to meet with me. And I definitely want to just get it's not structured at all. It's mainly just wanted to know your story and how you came about reflex integration work. And yeah, we can start there.
Okay. So I met Pam. I saw Pam and her um former business partner presenting about reflex integration through an organization called TACA. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's Talk About Curing Autism. Although
Oh,
they've changed their name now, it's now Autism Community in Action. So but they they came to the library in my town and presented about reflex integration. And I was sitting in the presentation, and I just was seeing my son who's on the spectrum, and I just was like, that's Aiden, that is my son, like that is exactly what he needs. And I went home that night and I told my husband, I said, I don't know how we're going to pay for this, but we need to do this.
yeah.
And I said, we're going to do it. And the next day I contacted BrainFit and said, I want to set up a screening. And so that's how I first learned about reflex integration. So then that was in May. My dog is trying to come in. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, that was in like May of 2018. My son started at BrainFit, going through the program in like June of that year. And then, Pam and her partner did a Brain Gym 101 class, and they do the 3-day reflex integration class. And we always, she always encouraged the parents to go, but I was a full-time working parent. And I was like, I can't take time off. It was like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it's like, I can't take a day. And finally I managed to get there in October of that year. I went to the day one. I took a day. I went to the first day. By the end of the first day, I said, I got to come back. I called my husband, and my husband was leaving for England. He's British. He was leaving for England that following Monday. And I was supposed to like help get ready and pack him up. And like my mom was coming to help me take care of the kids. And it was like a very busy weekend. And I said, nope, I got to go back. I have to learn more about this.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to learn the other reflexes and like, what
Yeah.
do I do? So, so I ended up going back for the other two classes. I mean, the other 2 days, and
Mhm.
learning all the reflexes. It was Pam's business partner at the time, Christina, who was teaching it. And I went home and I said, okay, now Aiden was already in the program with Pam, but I was like, I can do more of this. I can do this with me, and I can do it with my husband, and I can do it with my other son. And
Yeah.
we started like doing more of the work. We almost went overboard. Actually, we did go over a little more, and and oh, like overdid it a little bit. So because I was so gung ho on it, but I was like, we can do this. This is not hard, and it's going to make changes. And so that kind of started us on the journey. Then I went to in January, the next January, I went to Pam's Brain Gym 101 class. And at BrainFit, because we use Brain Gym and Primitive Reflex Integration together. So when I went to that class, everything was like, everything I learned in the Primitive Reflex Integration and then the Brain Gym, they all were fitting together so nicely.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there, and I just, at the end of that class, or it was the second day of that class, I went to Pam and I said, I want to work for you. I want to do this work with kids, because
Right.
I was a teacher, and I was, and I started to see, as I was doing this, I started to see kids in my class. I wasn't a classroom teacher. I was a specialist teacher at that point. I was teaching technology. I have been a classroom teacher though. So I've worked with kids for years and years. And I started to see all these kids in the school, and I was like, that one's in Moro, and that one needs to work on fear paralysis, and oh, TLR with that one. And I just was like, I need to do this. And so I said, well, I want to work for you. And I was still teaching full time. And I said, I want to work for you after school. I want to do this, part-time after school. And so I started working for BrainFit at the end of February last year. So it was 2019 into February. So it's been about a year and a half. And now I took a leave of absence from my teaching position so that I could do more of this work. And it's just awesome. And then once I started getting into it and doing it with kids, I was like, this is just, it's so amazing. And all this time, once I became a coach, I could go to the classes for free. So I kept going back. Like Pam will tell you, I went back. Like I just, every time there was, because they would do them like every 3 or 4 months, like 3 or 4 times a year. And I would just keep coming back. I went to the Brain Gym class again. I went to each of them like 3 or 4 times, and I just kept working on myself. And as I was working on myself and seeing all these changes in me, I was like, this is just incredible. And then I was working as a coach and seeing it in kids as well. And it was like, this is just, it's, yeah. So like what I wrote in my blog was like, I used to be, when I was a kid, I was a total fear paralysis kid. I used to hide behind my mother. I was the shy one. I wouldn't talk to people. I didn't like to, even up till last year, I didn't like to call people on the phone. I was like scared of calling people on the phone. Didn't want to call. And now I'm like calling people left and right for my job. I'm Zooming with you. I mean, I went to this, here's a little story for you. So soon after I had, it was last summer. So summer of 2019, I had went to one of the reflex classes with Pam. Again, was another time that I went. And at this point was kind of like there as a participant, but also as a coach. So I would do work for myself, but also help, facilitate it with other people. But I met this one woman who lives in New York City. So we're about 4 hours away from New York City. She lives in New York City, and this was July, and she and I kind of hit it off friendly, but we kept in touch. She went back to New York after the class. We kept in touch over Facebook, and she was coming back in the end of August for she does a networking group here, and she came back to do this networking group, and she invited me to come as a guest. And I was like, all right, I'll go. And I have never ever been I'm a teacher. I've never been to a networking group. I've never gone to anything like that. I've never been in the business world up till this point. So so that was like brand new for me.
Yeah.
So I agreed to go. It was the day before my school was going to start. And I was like, I'm going to go. And the day of, we were meeting at her friend's house, and whom I had never met. And I met her the one day, right? And then I know what it was. She was staying at her friend's house. So I met her that one day, went to her friend's house with her, met the friend the one time for like an hour, right? The next day was the meeting. So I went back the next day after my first day of school. Went back the next day. She texts me on the, as I was driving and saying, I'm running a little late for my workshop. I'm going to be a little late. And why don't you just go, to a friend's house? And I'm as I'm driving, I'm like, sure, no problem. And as I'm driving, I'm thinking, okay, so I am going to this friend of this person I have met once, right? and going to go and like go to this person's house and stay with them and chat with them for a couple hours until my other friend that I've only met a couple of times and lives 4 hours away comes and meets me there. And then I'm going to go to a meeting. And I ended up at the meeting standing up, and because they like stand up in front of people and like describe the business, what you do, that sort of thing. I stood up in front of everybody. I said what I did at BrainFit. I talked about the business and I said, it's not my business, but this is what I do.
Yeah.
And um, and not like, I was completely confident. I stood up there with a microphone. I'm like, yep, this is what we do. And I just, as I was reflecting on that, I was like, I can't, this is not the same person. Like, I was like, this
Mhm.
is not the same person that I was a year ago or 2 years ago. Like, it was so cool.
Yeah, it's that's the amazing thing about even our brain. Like it's always consistently growing. If we let it, and then if we believe that we can also work on our own stuff. And I've seen parents who come just like you
Yeah.
for their kids, and then realizing, wait a minute, I need to work on this. I've done in services for teachers, and
Mm-hmm.
half of the session afterwards is going to be everybody checking on their body and realizing, wait, I can't do this, I can't do that. I have
Yeah.
anxiety, I have ADHD, and as a kid, and but we learn as adults. I think we compensate so much, and we put so much effort to get sometimes little results. But when our bodies, brain is integrating, you can see the difference.
Yeah. You don't know that you're not there until you're there. Like
Yes.
that, like in my blog, I was like, I didn't even know that I was in such a state until I was out of it, you know?
Yeah.
And then I was like, wow, like life is really different now.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be as hard. um,
Right.
that's awesome. And then what results have you seen with your kid, and how long has he been working with? I guess now you're coaching him, or he's still going
He's
and being
not going anymore. He went for like a little over a year. It was about 12, that was about 15 months, I think, that he went. He has I've seen, biggest thing with him was um the emotional control for
Yeah,
him. So he had a lot of explosive, like, wasn't aggressive, but he would, just um explode at the drop of a hat if something, if he was frustrated or if something wasn't going his way, he would just be like, I can't. And
yeah,
now he's like, okay, mom, like, and he can get to his thinking brain, as we call it, getting to his thinking brain. He can rationalize. He can be like, this is not. He can use his words. He can find his words. That was one of the biggest things we saw with him. His balance, his coordination got better. His handwriting, he still struggles with handwriting, but his grip, like he used to hold this pencil like really funky like this. This
yeah,
paper all turned, and now he's got like a regular, like he's got more of a tripod. It's still, there's a habit there. He was 13 when he started, so it was, but he can write better. He's got a better angle on his pencil and that sort of thing. But the biggest thing for him was the emotional regulation and being able to
yeah,
get to his thinking brain and rationalize and talk
yeah.
it out. Um, but
It's
yeah,
awesome. And if because right now when we do, and I'm gonna ask you if you're the one who recommended my
I,
book to Pam. Were you the one?
yeah,
Okay, good. I'm gonna ask you about that. Before that, what I do with my work is coach parents, right? And from a parent's perspective, what would you say to a new parent? Because it can be like what you did, and the result you're getting is because you spend the time to learn, and became the idea. Sometimes it can be with even with reflex integration, can be so complicated in the way it's put together, but when we simplify it and
yeah,
make it very accessible for parents, and when you got it, you're like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to do, this totally makes sense. But there is sometimes a gap between those two. For parents, they can come very overwhelmed their first time, they've never heard of reflex integration, what is this, and
right.
it can be challenging. So, what would your advice be for parents, for first time parents?
So I kind of have a little. mantra of my own that I started when I started this work for myself. And it's Maya Angelou's quote. Now it's leaving my brain. Now it's completely out of my brain.
It's okay.
It's going to come to me in a second. But
Yeah.
it's about not knowing what you didn't know, before you knew it. Basically, it was like, don't beat yourself up because you didn't know it, but
Yeah.
now that you know it, oh, I know, when you know better, you do better. That's what it is. It's when you
Okay.
know better. So it's, once you learn about this, don't feel, it can seem a little overwhelming at first, but really it's not rocket science. We say that at BrainFit all the time. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
It's really just understanding how the brain and body are connected.
Yep.
And I think that, as a parent, it's easy to say, I want my kid to be first. And of course we all want our kids to like have that first,
Hmm.
but it's one of those, like, put your oxygen mask on first, because you're going to do better for your kid if you are doing it as well.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, I think that parents, it's not hard to do once you know how to do it, like you're saying. Like, it's once you understand the concepts behind it, and you
Yeah.
understand that there's just these, simple movements that can make such huge changes.
Yeah.
It's worth it, because it's not hard to do. It might seem that way at first, and just taking it step by step. I guess that's how I. And when
Yeah.
you start to see the little changes, when you start to notice stuff, it's that, for me, like, I got excited. Then I'm like, wow, like, all right, like, if we can do it with this, like, one, reflex, like, let's work on this one and see what we can change. And
Yeah. 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 I think that's how I see it too. It's like it's actually simpler than we make it. It's all about once you get it. So it's the sometimes I say that as OTs we go and it's like sensory regulation, sensory overload, work on this, work on that, but it's easier for me in my practice once I put like my reflex glasses on. Like
yep,
it clears out everything. I don't have to guess things. I can just target it, and it's the foundation, and everything starts to build on top of it. Like the results will come, and just like you say, the self-regulation. Because when you're going and doing these simple exercises that almost seems like, why am I working on this? He's having an emotional outburst. Why are we doing ball
right,
exercise, for instance, or something, whatever you're doing, right? But then you see like, no, I'm connecting the brain to the body, right? So yeah, try to simplify it as much as possible. And one of the advice too is like, before you make your kids do the exercises, do it yourself. See
yeah.
how it feels in your body.
Do it
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
Like, I do, we do it with them. And like, when we work at BrainFit too, we do the exercises with the kids. So
Yeah.
that's too, as like a coach, like, I'm still working on myself, because I'm working with clients and doing it myself as well.
Yeah.
And the other thing, like, that we talk about a lot at BrainFit is like to trust the process.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, like, why are we doing ball exercises when my kid's having emotional outbursts? And it's
Yeah.
like, trust the process, like, trust that I know, like, that this is where this is stemming from. This is the root of this. And as we do this, you're going to see that behavior gradually improve.
Yeah.
And so, like, just trusting. And I know as a parent, I was like, yeah, what, I don't get it. Like, I was like, Pam, and I kind of sat back, and I was like, I observed the whole thing. I didn't participate at first when he
Yeah.
first started. I just watched it, observed, and would ask questions and things. But
Yeah.
she would just say, trust the process. And I'm like, okay, I trust it. And then when I started to see changes, I was like, okay, it's working. Like, this is helping. And
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. I saw even what I see, even my clients yesterday, is like, it's amazing to see, like, one of the parent was saying that, oh, everything else, it seems to come easy for her now. Right. So we're doing these specific reflex integration exercises that she's doing. She's a little older, she's 12 too, so she can, self-motivate.
yeah,
But it's like once you give the parents that result, when they start to see like, oh, she's now other things are becoming easier for her. That's because you're working on the foundation. And I'm really hoping that more and more parents will find out, and and therapists will learn too. Like this is not something I learned in school as an OT, right? This is something it took me years and years and in training to get. And I wish like I learned it when I was like just a new occupational therapist, because I spent so much time working on scale, working on, and but now I can get results faster because we're working on reflex integration. So that's awesome. And I want to ask you, like, how did you find the book? I think you found the first book, right? The Integrating Primitive Reflexes Through Playing
So
it.
I was on Facebook and I just was searching primitive reflexes because I just do that on Twitter now and again, and I'll just search. I try and be active and just looking for new resources, and I just was like doing a search for primitive reflexes, and your group came up, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting, and then it said a book, and I'm like, well, I got to get that book, so I ordered it right away on Amazon. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this book. I love your book. I think it is so user friendly. And that's where I was like, Pam, look. And she's like, where did you get this? I'm like, so I told her how I found you, and then she's like, can I borrow, I want to read the book. And and I just, because it, and you have in there different exercises than what we do, so it was like an addition to what we do. It was good complement to what we do, so I was like, there's some new things that I hadn't
Yeah.
hadn't heard before, so that was awesome.
Yeah,
I
that's the
love
beauty of working with healthcare, almost healthcare, right? So we can be like, okay, this is how you do it, and the whole point is connecting the brain to the body,
right.
and then how can we do it in the most effective way? I think I came from a parent perspective. I mean, I was a therapist for the longest time before I was a parent, but now that we need to work a lot more on vision and vision therapy for my kids, and gross motor and activities and core strength. The vision therapist even was recommending, oh, you need to work on primitive reflexes. And I was like, that's what I do. And so what I found, the reason, just to give you a background, the reason I came up with this book is because I realized, even though I was trained in Mascotova, I know brain gym, all those things, it's different as a therapist than as a parent, you know, because a home is harder to get them to do a lot of things, and
Yeah.
I think it's more like, okay, I need to simplify this. It's just a lot of work to get my kids to constantly do this. How can we make it super accessible? How can we like simplify this?
Right.
And yeah, I'm glad you found it, and more therapists are finding it. Have you tried any of the exercises and you found it useful? And
I tried the duck and pigeon walk with one of my clients. We
okay.
were and I had her holding the stick, and I did that. Yeah, she's one that I have to be really creative with, because she doesn't like to, I can't just say let's do this. Like she's 5 years old, and so she's one of those where I have to really work it into a fun play and not say this is what we're working on. I just
Yeah.
And so I was like, let's be ducks, and here's a stick and hold this, and like we're quacking, and so it was just making it fun. And yeah, I did. I liked that one, and that was um I gotta can go revisit that with her and keep her going through the progression.
Yeah.
Um, but I did. I tried that one. I haven't. Some of the ones, there was some overlap with what we do. We do a lot. I do a lot as well with the big balls. I don't know
Okay.
if you read my blog post. I have a blog post about that. I call it the big green ball. You
Uh,
should read the blog post. It's
I saw,
specific.
I saw the post. I was reading and I was like, I wonder if that's that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that title.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because I use it for so many different activities. But yeah, I did that one. There was something else. Oh, I know the Moro, well, it's all Moro, but the um on the mat, where you're like flat on the mat, like pressing onto the mat. So we do like the superstar one, but
Yeah.
I had them like pressing in or pressing down. Like I liked that one,
Yeah.
um, face down and face up, doing the pressing
Bird
into.
Project. Yeah. Those,
Yeah,
yeah, those are good too. And some of them you can also use for other reflexes, kind of overlaps, right, with the
yeah,
TLI, I think.
yeah. A lot of things overlap.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's great. So the second book is coming out soon, so I'm
Yeah,
excited about it. and then I'm gonna send it to you guys once it comes out, and and you can do it as well. And what would you give advice for new therapists who are learning, who have not been taught this at school, right?
Well,
So
take a class.
yes. Because as a parent, you've done a lot of treatments. I'm assuming your kid has been in different kind of
Oh
therapy
yeah. Oh yeah.
before,
All sorts
right?
of, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not, we're not saying like, oh, all the other therapy tools don't work. I always say like, I've been trained and I'm trained in several things, but I the most effective by far, that effective tool, their treatment tool or method I know of and I found so far is reflex integration, because it deals with the basic,
Because like you said, you're working at the root of it. So if you're trying, like so I'm teaching the reflex class. I don't know if you know that now. I teach the reflex class for Brain Fit now. I just started.
great.
I did my first one in March in person, and now I'm doing one online coming up in November, starting in November. I'm doing it online, which will be interesting because, it's a movement-based class, but we're gonna make it work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do a lot of, I'm doing, since COVID, I've done a lot of like parent consults through Brain Fit, and I've done a lot of teaching of that. And like, we're on Zoom just like this. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm on the floor and like, well, this is, so it's going to be kind of along those lines, but I am teaching it. And so the, where was I going with this?
Are we talking, the advice you have for new therapists?
For therapists, yes, and parents. Yeah, therapists was to learn it because, I know, because we're talking about, like you said, you're talking about getting to the root cause. So if you're looking at sensory integration and you're looking at the balance and coordination, you can do all those, but if you're not getting to the bottom of that pyramid, you're not getting to the primitive reflexes,
Yeah.
they're not going to be as effective because you're not getting to the root of it.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what I have found too. And when you look at reflexes like the Moro and the fear paralysis, I'm not a therapist, so I can't really say, but it seems like those, like you need to do that primitive reflex integration, because if you don't do that, you're not gonna, you can do talk therapy and all that kind of thing, but I don't think it's necessarily gonna have the same effect as,
Yeah.
working.
Definitely. Because it is, you can use the actual word. It is reflexive. You can't control it.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
That's not something you can use your higher thinking brain, right? To say like, okay, that's a lot of work, right? In order, maybe you can train someone to, mentally be like, okay, I know I shouldn't be, talk yourself through that. But that's like so much energy exerted to get one result.
Right.
Well, why not integrate your body?
Right. And
Right.
change that motor pattern. So it's not, you're not fighting all the time. Exactly. And free up that energy.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you came to just, online Zoom, that, you want to talk. I think this will help a lot of parents and new therapists. And I wanted to create all these interviews to give ideas to other parents as well to relate. Is there anything you wanted to say, of anything that you feel like, okay, if I tell you one thing, this is something you can do? Or one, before I forget, how much time did you spend at home working with your kid?
We would do it at bedtime. So we would do it for about 20 minutes a night. That was almost too much for him though. So I felt like and because he was also seeing Pam too. So once a week for an hour. So it was like, it got to be a little too much where he started to pull back. So one thing, like, you want to do the work, but you have to be mindful that too much of this work can actually backfire. And
Yeah.
I've actually I had a family who I started with, and they were seeing another therapist who did it's a speech therapist, but she also does primitive reflex integration. And they started seeing both of us at the same time. And I said, just be mindful that too much can can backfire, because too much can be overloading for the system, because the brain needs time to integrate and to myelinate those, pathways. And she said, okay. Well, like 3 weeks down the road, she's like, he's having meltdowns and he's like this and that. And I was like, remember what I said to you 3 weeks ago about it can sometimes be a little too much?
Yeah.
And he was like, oh yeah, that's right, you did. Okay, we'll back off. And then, and they backed off, and then we started to see that, nice progression again instead of, so, definitely working it into some kind of a routine so
Yeah.
that some parents do it, some kids do it, especially now with all this homeschool stuff going on. People are working it into their day, or they're working it into, before they do their schoolwork, or at night, or, in the afternoon or whatever, but doing a little bit
Every day.
every day rather than, trying to really, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly. I wanted to, from your experience, I think parents need to hear that, because as a therapist, we can recommend, like I recommend, like if you have 10 to 15 minutes a day and you can give me that, or you can give your kid that, and
Right.
you will see result, right?
Right.
So because you're
And
constantly,
it doesn't have to be just sitting down and doing the exercises. It can be fun, work it into a game. You have this exercise, like work it into a game so that it's more fun for them. Like one of the things I do with kids from Moro is, the ball hugging one, where they're hugging the ball and
yeah,
they're wrapped around it. But while they're doing that, I'm trying to pull it out from under them. So there's our game, so now they're like learning they can do that.
yeah,
But I'm playing, and they love it, and I'm down there and playing and interacting, and
yeah,
it's such fun, and I do that. I've done that with 12-year-olds,
yeah.
it's a little harder with a 12-year-old kid on the ball. It can be done.
Yeah, I can mean it. You just have to change your game, right? So
Yeah.
that even with the ATNR, the one that's coming out, I have recommendation for parents for extracurricular activities. You're gonna put your kid in different sports, but we can now give you ideas which sport or which activity you can do. That's still you're playing with your kid, but
Right.
as long as you know, hey, let me just whatever time I have with my kid, let's pick games that fits the need, right? So it doesn't, yeah, you're right. I tell parents like we can incorporate all these things throughout the day. You can also do the rigid one. I'm like, we're doing exercise, let's go. But you can also, you know, make it like fun, So
And some kids respond to that. Let's, here's my thing and let's do it. And
yeah,
some kids like that. And other kids are like, yeah, they might resist that a little bit, but,
yeah. So
and help
flexibility.
and helping the kids to notice the changes too, like so that they start to see and make the connection. Like that's what I was really big with that with my son, was like, well, remember we're working on this reflex and that's why you can now do this easier,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that they can get the buy-in for, why we're doing it.
yeah. I
It doesn't,
definitely do that. Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. Like I, as much as possible, I explain myself to the kids, even though they're like little, like my 4-year-old now or my 6-year-old
yeah,
now, even my own kids. I do that. Or my, the clients I work with online too right now. It's like, remember you can, yeah, we tell them it's like, yeah, I see it now.
yeah,
Or sometimes what will help is finding out what your kids would like to do. Like they want to swim better, they want to ride their horse better,
yeah,
and I'll tell them want to run better. It's like, okay, this is gonna help you. This exercise will help you run faster, or this one's gonna help you swim better. Now you're swimming better because you did
right.
a good job working on this. So they will start to respond to that. Getting them, you know, be part of the team, because not only forcing them to do the exercises, right? So that's great. That's awesome. So and you said just one more. So your kid has not, like right now, he doesn't do
He's not doing any right now. No, he got to the point where he, like, his reflexes were integrated,
mhm.
and he was starting to resist it. And Pam and I decided, we're like, okay, we took a break. He did a little work with a different coach at Brain Fit around she was doing some like executive functioning type things, because he had made some improvement. He's got a lot of stuff going on, and he has immune system and digestive, and there's a lot
Yeah,
bigger picture, for him, but
Yeah.
he made some changes, but we got to the point where like, okay, I think we've integrated his reflexes. Let's look at other things, that he needs to continue to work on. But he definitely made progression for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, in a year, you said about a year and a half. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Okay, great. So I think I'll put your blog post in the bottom. I don't know where I'm gonna put it, but I'll put it I'll put it here. So
Great.
whoever,
It's part of the reason why I started the reason why I started the blog is because I want to tell the story of brain fit, but in there telling the story of primitive reflexes and how they work, and the changes that I see and the things that I, see with kids.
yeah, yeah, it can be like I think the whole point like is like for me even with my business, with Polaris therapy, it's not really the different programs per se. Like I think parents to know like it's working on wherever you go, whoever you
Mhm.
work with, focus on primitive reflexes. So you're gonna be all over the world working with different therapists and try to look for a therapist who can help you integrate these primitive reflexes and bring them with you guys. You use primitive reflex integration and brain
Great.
gym, right? So yeah, the combination, that's what OTs do. So that's awesome. So whoever is listening, just look for programs that help you to integrate these primitive reflexes. Um, and if you don't have any last words for either therapists or new parents, I think, yeah, I just want to say thank you for joining me and meeting me for the first time. And I'll make sure that I send you the link for this second book on the ATNR. That one has a lot more exercises in it, and
Great.
um, and a lot of I'm incorporating a lot of vision work, reading, copying, those activities. Those are personal to me because those are the things I work literally whatever I work on with my kids, and I plan on working out with my kids is what I'm creating as I
Mhm.
go. So if I can get my kids to do it, so that is big. And once the videos get um, created, because each book are going to have their own video exercises
Oh,
and
great.
links.
Yeah, that,
So in that way it will be easier because I found out that parents want to know, because the illustration, it took me a long time to get a great illustrator to illustrate it specifically.
yeah.
um, but more people want even deeper, like they even want to know exactly how it's done. So we're getting that created, so I will let you know when that comes out too.
Yeah, that's great because it is hard to. We find that too when we have our illustrations. It's like, to have a video. We've created videos too recently for when we teach classes so that the parents can then go back and watch them because it is hard to remember, and it's hard to tell necessarily from illustrations exactly, what you mean. And it's simple and we know it's simple, but when you try and explain it, it gets a little
Yeah,
tricky. But that's awesome that you can have videos.
yeah, I'll let you know. Yeah, I thought the book would be like simple, but I was like, oh, we need more. And so okay, great. So it's nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming, and hopefully we'll have you come again after the ATNR book and how you're going to be using it, and hopefully you and Pam and how that's working out
That's
and
great.
connect and collaborate. So that'll be great.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.